Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Dr. Cammy and Karen Go Keto, where Dr. Cammy and I are on our way to transition from a standard American diet to a ketogenic carnivore lifestyle. We started this channel in August of 2023. It has, it's just a transition. So we are not fully carnivore, maybe fully keto or close to it. And this is just our journey. So Cami wanted to talk today about identity. So I'm going to turn it over to her. Cami, what's going on?
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Karen. Part of this transition, we call it a lifestyle transition because we don't just want to do it, we don't want to just talk about food. And for me, food has a lot to do with other things in my life. And it's not just about eating. And so I wanted to talk about identity shifting. It's called identity shifting. And there's a gentleman, his name is Clark Kegley, Kegley, Clark Kegley. And I watched this podcast that Karen so lovingly sent to me about shifting your identity. And it was really, really wonderful. And it's short, it's not real long. I don't know, maybe 15 minutes. And so I watched it a few times. I'm going to watch it every day because I got myself shifted into my new identity, my size 8 cami. And it was the most wonderful thing. And at the same time, I was in ketosis because I had been eating properly. But I have to say that it only lasted about 18 or 20 hours or 12. I don't know. It was short lived because then something else happened that caused me to feel bad about myself. And I felt the energy just drain out of me like immediately. It was very interesting. But this is a way that you can get into this new identity. So I drew a circle here and it has here a circle here, and here is actions on the outside. And then on the inside, it says stories that we tell ourselves, stories that you tell yourself. And then on the very middle is your identity, right? Let's see. Can you see that?
Pull it back a little.
It seems to be getting blurry now.
There, right
Okay,
there.
there it is. And so there are stories that you tell yourself, and then identity, and then actions are on the outside. So the way that most people work on changing their identity is that they change their actions first, and then that causes their stories to change, and then that can change the way that you identify yourself. But the way that Clark was talking about it was that if you go straight to the inside and work on changing your identity first, and how you identify with yourself and the world, then that's a quicker way to do it. And so what you can do is you can change your self-image and you change who you think you are, and then that gets you to your new identity quicker. So it was just a very interesting video and I really liked it. And the reason why I liked it so much was because it reminded me of when I was pre-med. And so when I remember the moment I decided I was going to try to become a doctor, and it was on an airplane ride, and I made that decision. And in that moment, I thought I could maybe pull it off. And so I said, okay, well, I think I can pull it off. I'm going to be a doctor. And so in that moment, I was a doctor. And then the next, I think it was 8 years that I worked to get into to get finished with medical school, and to become a doctor were just steps that I had to take toward that identity. So that was something that took a long time, right? That's 8 years. I mean, you can change your identity and you can be within months or within weeks or within, 1 or 2 years, a different identity just by living into it. So this is kind of a little bit simplified. And he also talked about identity anchors, which your stories keep you, create these identity anchors, and it keeps you from being, because he calls your new identity 2.0, and your old identity is identity 1.0. And in between identity 1.0, you 1.0 and you 2.0 are your stories. And those are created by identity anchors. And so it goes into that too. But I'll put the link down there. And I just wanted people to encourage people to look at this and work on changing your identity in a way that makes it easier and quicker.
Right, so the identity that you wanted to create is the size 8 Cami, or that you've created is size 8 Cami.
Correct. That's part of the identity.
And so what is the new stories versus the old stories that you are creating?
I haven't gotten that far.
Well, actually, you have. That's the funny thing.
I can tell you one story actually because there's something that happened this morning, and I can tell you one story that's changing is that it's okay to screw up. It's okay to make mistakes and to still be in my new identity. Because my old identity was like, it's not okay to screw up. You're supposed to work on being perfect. When you screw up, that shows that that you should have less self-worth or self-love, just things like that. That's not the way I am anymore with my new identity.
So how can you marry this new identity and the stories that you tell yourself to the issue that you're dealing with not wanting to eat or liking your carnivore food?
I'm not sure. I haven't really thought about how to create new stories. I just know that the stories that I have, I don't like. So I have to think about that.
Well, the thing is, stories are not things that you create and you think about. Stories are the things that you create on the fly, right? Those are the things those are the conversations that go on in your head.
Well, but a lot of my stories are old.
No, they might be rooted in the past or anchored in the past, but they are not, the stories themselves are not old. So, like, for instance, your pre-med. So, your pre-med stories that you told, those could be the stories that you use, but you're not using those, right? The stories that you told at pre-med is nothing's going to stop me. I'm unstoppable,
Yeah.
right? I got to do it. Whatever it takes. You were your best, you were your own best cheerleader at that time. And you had a lot of things that you had to do that, you had to go to class, you had to study, you had to give up things that that you normally would have in your schedule, and you had to give those up to change your schedule around so that you could do those things, right?
Yeah.
So those are ideas to look at so that you have to give up the conversation of I don't like what I'm eating. Because
Yeah.
if you don't like what you're eating, you're not going to get the goals that you want, no matter what it is. Size 8 cami, size 10 cami, size 16 cami. Not going to happen if you don't like what you're eating. Doesn't say that you have to create the story that you like what you're eating. You just have to give up the story that you don't like it.
I see. I get it.
Right?
I get it.
Right?
Right.
Because if you don't like it, you know how you are, right?
Right. And the other thing that I think I really need too is to have a sense of urgency. Like, I don't, I need more of a sense of urgency. Like when I was pre-med, I had a sense of urgency because I wanted to get all that stuff done so I could get into medical school so I could be there for 4 years.
Yeah.
I feel like because you just said I've got to get it done previously when you were talking about the pre-med stuff. And I don't have that sense of urgency right now. Like I've got to get it done.
Well, the pre-med creates a structure, a timeline structure
Hmm.
that could be a little flexible, but especially at the time that you went to med school, not very flexible, right? You did this, and if you didn't do it and you didn't do it that way, you were out and you weren't going to get back in, right? The rare instance was somebody that got back in because they failed out.
So I need something to create a sense of urgency for me, and maybe making a definite timeline would help me.
Well, or importance, because you look at things like, well, I'll be thin when the boys get married. That's one of your goals, and you can't tell me that's not one of your goals. I hear you say it, right? It runs
Right.
around. It runs around in space in your brain.
Right.
But
And that
but
could
we
be
don't.
soon.
It could be soon, or it could be never, right? It's got to be your date, right? It's like, let's pretend they're getting married, September of 2025. What's in place so you can be ready for September of 2025, right? 4 months. What can you do in 4 months? And how do you support yourself structurally to do it?
Yeah.
A food for thought.
Food and non-food.
Precisely.
Yeah.
All right. That's where we are. Identity and creation, and part of it is just being prepared.
Absolutely. And being driven and knowing that you're worth your success.
Driven. Yeah, think about it. What is it going to take to make you drive toward this goal?
Yeah.
That's why I keep saying buy a new outfit. And I know what you say is, well, I got plenty in my garage. Not the same thing. Buy a new outfit, pin it to the wall, and that's what you see. See, you put those pictures up, right? You put those pictures up, but then you took them down when viewing audience was appearing. All right, we'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great day.
All right, take care. Thanks for
Bye.
listening. Subscribe, comment.